They are under our resource tab. We have a whole bunch of resources listed, but there are three that I just want to highlight quickly: the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, SAMHSA's National Helpline, and also the Trevor Project for LGBTQ plus youth. And there's another one that Shilpa wanted us to mention, childmind.org, that has support groups for teenagers. Right, Shilpa?
Yeah,
okay.
Child Mind Institute.
Child Mind Institute. So we are joined today by two incredible people, Shilpa Kulkarni. And why don't I let you introduce yourself, Shilpa? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Kingston. I'm Shilpa Kulkarni. I'm a mom of two wonderful kids, Shiv and Sanvi, and a wife of a very, very supportive husband, Vishwas. He's right next to me here, but he's my rock. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Asha George-Guiser, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am Asha George-Guiser. I'm very honored to be with all of you tonight. I'm a marriage and family and individual therapist, close to 40 years. And I want to give voice to those who do not have voice, particularly in the LGBTQ plus community among Desi and South Asians.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for being with us. Shilpa, this year has been a year of hell for you, right? You lost your child. Not more than like 6 months ago. Before I start asking you questions, I just want the audience to know that before this conversation, Shilpa, Asha, and I have had other conversations, and we learned a lot of what you're going to learn today. And it is astonishing to me, and it was astonishing to Asha, all the care that Shilpa and Vishwas took to support their child, all the resources from wellness, from psychiatry to therapy to hypnotherapy, and spent tons of money. You literally did everything that you could to save your child. And I just want to make sure that I say that in the outset of this conversation, right? I think the first thing what the audience probably wants to know is why have you decided to tell your story?
Yeah, I guess it's almost, whenever we think about Shiv, the story went, whatever route it went. The reason why we want to really share our story is while we were going through this, while Shiv was struggling with his health issues and LGBTQ identity, very often he used to feel very isolated and not understood, sometimes even by us. While helping him, supporting him, and looking for resources for him, we actually felt lonely, helpless at many times. We felt like we were so ill-prepared as parents of a gay child facing mental health challenges. And this feeling of loneliness all around was really, really rough. It exists basically due to the stigma that surrounds in our society for LGBTQ children, mental health, and society's unwillingness to share difficult situations with each other. In reality, there are so many others who are suffering silently. The only way to shatter that stigma is, I think, to be open, to talk about it, to create awareness, get education around it. So if by sharing our experience, we thought, however painful it is, even if one child or one family could be helped, we would have that.
That's extraordinary. Thank you, Shilpa. Thank you. This might be tough, but I really want the world to know a little bit about Shiv. Can you talk a little bit about Shiv? What was he like? What was his attributes? What was his character like? We know he's brilliant. He was a brilliant kid.
Yeah. You are asking his mom how he was like. Just remember that.
Yes.
So he was a kind, talented, smart, brilliant, as you said. He was a rising freshman at Livingston High School. He was a fiercely protective brother, a loyal friend, and for the most part, an ideal son and a very sensitive, sweet soul. He identified as gay. As a mother, I have probably a whole lot of superlative adjectives for him, but anyone who knew Shiv would agree that he was all of this and more. Growing up, he and his sister, they were just 19 months apart and they were a handful. They fought with each other as most of the siblings do, but they were very close with each other as well. He was a very good older brother. He was academically bright, but also was very empathetic to his peers. And, some of these things actually came out during his vigil because some of his friends, some of his classmates, they shared those letters with us, and that's what it came out.
Yeah.
And due to his demeanor, he was very well liked by all his teachers and coaches. He did not care much for contact sports like soccer, football. That was a little bit of a sore point for his dad because he was very disappointed since he is a soccer lover. But he was fiercely competitive as well, and he enjoyed table tennis and volleyball. He had academic ambitions and dreams. He was very well read. He had a very good sense of humor. Apart from this, he was just a regular teenager, but he was mature with a basic level of, in his mom's and dad's mind, basic level of social media addiction. You can TikTok and Discord.
Yeah.
But yeah, all in all, this was Shiv. I mean, again, as I said, like probably I could talk about him for the whole hour, but this was the crux.
Those are cool. One of the other things that I found really astonishing that is that how transparent and open your relationship was. You and Vishwas had a relationship with him. It was very open, right? He was able to tell you how he felt. You were able to tell him how you felt, and you both, worked through things. That is not something that is common in our Desi culture. And Dr. George-Guiser, Dr. George-Guiser will talk about that. But how did you cultivate that, this openness that you had with this child? Because he came out to you super young.
Yeah, I would tell you about that. But yes, you are right. Like Vishwas and I, we have always been very open and transparent to start with in our dealings with each other. Yeah. And it probably comes from our logical, mathematical, engineering mindset, I would say, probably. Our relationship, I think, has always been based on clear communication, things that are on our mind, what is bothering us, expectations, why, what, very black and white sort of stuff. And our parenting was very much rooted in that philosophy. And we thought by being open, we were teaching our kids to be the same and come to us about any issues. So, yes, he did come to me. But in reality, it's interesting how you asked me, how did it play out? In reality, I think they felt confident about our love and acceptance, but they constantly worried about being judged. And I think it's not just them. Children in general, I'm seeing that they do worry a lot about being judged by everybody around them, including the parents. So that was one of the reasons why I feel like, even when he was probably feeling distress about his mental health, about his identity much earlier, but he did not come to me about it. He did not really speak to me I got to know about it accidentally. And that's how sort of the conversation started. But he never even showed that kind of distress ever to me or people around him either. So yeah, we had that openness, but I don't know how much the kids could really do that.
When did you realize that he was experiencing issues with his mental health, difficulties with his mental health?
Um, I actually found out accidentally about his sexual orientation while checking his phone. That was back last year in September, and I spoke to him about it right away, and he seemed very confused and distressed about it. We talked and we told him we love him and support him for who he is. But since this is a new territory for us as well, and he seemed confused about it, why don't we go to the professional therapist? And he agreed to that. So that was actually the openness, I would say, that I'm thankful for, which was a huge challenge before. Now, looking for a therapist in COVID world was not easy.
Yeah.
Getting a therapist, first getting a therapist who is ready to take new patients. And then we were trying to look for somebody who would be LGBTQ experience friendly, whatever you have it, right? It was a big challenge. We finally got someone, but our impression all along during that time was he needed therapy to talk through his thoughts about his sexual orientation. In reality, there were more complications. And he also had clinical depression, which was diagnosed almost 3 to 4 months later, because in spite of having 3 months of therapy, we felt like there wasn't enough progress, or the crisis seemed like it was just getting worse, or it wasn't going anywhere.
After,
sorry.
After his diagnosis, you're saying?
No, so this was after we had the therapy to talk about his sexual orientation. That's what was our understanding. And that's the thing that he said, and we thought, the way therapy happens here, it's like the kids have their privacy. So they go to the therapist, they talk to them, you go and ask the therapist, or you go and ask the kids, and they say everything is fine, or we are talking to the therapist. So we didn't know anything about it. But after 3 months, almost 3 to 4 months, we realized that maybe we need to think about the psychiatrist or the medical doctor. And that's when we went, and that is when he was actually diagnosed. That was end of Jan. At that time, he was probably depressed for a very long time already. But this was because we had no knowledge of what depression looks like. We had no, we used to speak a lot about everything, but we never spoke at home about LGBTQ identities or mental health. So as a family, even though we had these social and economic and topics, in general, and even academics and everything under the world, these were two topics somehow were absent from our discussions, mainly because we just didn't, as a family, we didn't have exposure to it. And that was our fault. Like we didn't work with any LGBTQ individual, or we had no social friends who were LGBTQ. So we were just unaware of this. And even from mental health perspective, I think we had some friends who probably were feeling depressed, but they were adult people and they had many work related issues and whatnot. So you kind of realize that, those are situational depression, but we didn't know anything about sort of teenage depression. So yeah, those were the things that our lack of knowledge probably didn't get us to realize how soon, how it had already set in.
Mm. Then you went to, you had gone to therapist and they had diagnosed him, right?
Yeah.
What was his life like, and what was life like for the family after the diagnosis?
Hmm.
Because now it's open, right? Like everybody knows what's going on, right?
Yeah, it was. Life after the diagnosis was scary, confusing, and a bit of a haze for all of us. The moment we realized the diagnosis, we kind of got on full on Papa Bear, Mama Bear kind of mode. We tried to research and rustle up the best possible resources for him, but with the knowledge and exposure that we had at that time. He had dialectical behavior therapy. It's called DBT, cognitive based therapy. It's called CBT. So he had multiple therapists, he had psychiatrists, he had hours of group and individual therapy. He was out of school, actually in a partial hospitalization program for almost 4 months. During that time, he was actually exempt from schoolwork, but he was finishing all the schoolwork on his own as if he was in the school full day all along without even our knowledge. I mean, the teachers eventually, when they told us, they were like, he has done everything that we had not even expected him to do and more on his own. So at the same time, on the alternative therapy front, we tried hypnotherapy. We took him to some yoga by Isha yoga instructor, then art of living, sky breathing for teenagers. We got a dog in April. Separately, we were trying to create like a peer support group where he could possibly feel comfortable sharing the struggles. Shiv was very reluctant to come out locally in Livingston. So we found about an organization called High Tops in Princeton who had the LGBTQ teenage support group. And I was looking for relevant sexual education through High Tops, but that was again only available through their school program. I came across, actually around the same time, I came across Desi Rainbow Parents group, which was very useful. Speaking to Aruna was very useful. We were hoping to find something teenage program, teenage kids program, but that time we didn't have it. And I know Aruna is really seriously thinking about launching that right now. But to expose him to potential role models, mentors was our, we sort of were trying to figure out some ways. We tried to get him to meet some friends, doctor, Asian doctors, a guy, a woman and a man who actually identified as lesbian and gay. So that he can see what the professional life as a gay man or gay woman looks like. We went and spent an evening at a successful gay couple's home in Brooklyn, just giving him, exposure to what it's no different from any other family kind of. Just hanging out with them, eating dinner, regular stuff. So all of this was supposed to give some hope for him. In the meantime, I found summer was coming soon. I found an outdoor summer camp in Berkshires, which was LGBTQ friendly. So he went there in July. That's another thing. But a fellow parent from DARPA, Desi Rainbow actually mentioned about homeopathy. So I found a few homeopaths and had an appointment with one of them on July 31st. But yeah, these were some of the things that we were trying to do. And yeah.
Got it. If able, are you able to talk about the events leading?
Yeah.
Take your time.
So this camp that I mentioned earlier, the Berkshires, That turned out to be a little bit of a complete disaster. It was an extremely mismanaged camp. No therapist was on site, inexperienced camp counselors, inadequate staff, miserable weather, and extreme wilderness conditions, which Shiv was not really interested in. It wasn't his liking. All in all, that really looked bad. And to top it all, he got racially profiled for being one of the two brown kids in a group of 200 or 300 kids, almost LGBTQ, all of them LGBTQ kids. And that really, really broke his heart. He felt very hopeless. I mean, imagine all his life, probably he kept on thinking, I just have to get out of Livingston and then I'll find my community. But suddenly he went there and he felt like he didn't belong anywhere. He sounded very upset. So we picked him up within 4 days, actually. Being that he got discriminated against by LGBTQ community for being brown was a blow to him. It was very, very tough for him. He was sort of disillusioned. As parents, we also felt very lost because that was supposed to give him really a good time for his summer. You know, his therapy and medications were continuing. The kids hadn't had any break. In summer, we always have been traveling at least 2 to 3 vacations a year. So this year we hadn't had it. So we just thought that let's take, even if we can't really go anywhere, let's take a small break and go to the city. He loved food. New York City has the best food. I said, let's just live there in a hotel. We will have good lunches, dinners, you name it. We wanted to be nearer to the providers so that in case we were right here. He had his therapy appointment on the Wednesday that we left. After the therapy appointment, we left at 10 o'clock. We had a great day on that day. We had brunch. We walked in Highland Park. The kids had an amazing time in the pool in the hotel. We had a great dinner. Next day was supposed to be cloudy weather, so we didn't want to go too far from the hotel. Our hotel was in Hudson Yards. So I had just heard about this structure called Vessel. We had no idea about the history of the building. We were living under the rock, probably. But we just naively went up there on that day.
Thank you. And that's where it happened, right?
Yeah. And
Thank you.
he basically jumped off of that building.